Hello, this is Don Cusic with the Music Biz, and today I have as my guest Liz Thiels, who is president and co-founder of Network Inc.
Right.
Liz, let me begin by asking, how did you get involved in the music industry?
Well, I moved to Nashville in 1979, I think it was. Prior to that time, I had always had close friends and roommates who were musicians and singers, so I'd always been interested and always been a big fan of concerts and going out to nightclubs and listening to live music and that kind of stuff, but I'd never really thought of being in music as a career. I really think of myself first as a public relations professional. I started out as a newspaper reporter and have worked in communications for most of my career. But after moving to Nashville, I started to realize that you could work in music and make money, golly. And my first real involvement in music was as an owner of a nightclub here called the Exit Inn. And as an owner of that establishment, I did public relations, publicity, bought advertising, that sort of thing. From the Exit Inn, I went on to become involved in theater and traveled across the country as a theatrical press agent with 2 or 3 Broadway musicals for a year. And then I returned to Nashville and worked for Joe Sullivan at Sound 70, first doing concert publicity, and then starting to work with his management clients, Charlie Daniels and Wet Willie and Dobie Gray and some other folks. And from there, Network Inc.
Network Inc. is an independent public relations publicity firm.
That's correct.
What does that mean? What do you do?
Well, that means we're in the communications business. That means that we prepare public relations plans for all of our clients. These plans begin, usually our clients come to us with a marketing plan in hand. The communications plan is plugged into that. Sometimes we'll sit down with a new client and contribute to a marketing plan. But usually that's provided to us. What that means is there are 4, the textbooks will tell you that there are 3 key ingredients to a good communications plan. The first thing is the message, the second thing is the medium, the third thing is the audience. To that I'd add a 4th thing, and that would be the result. There's no reason to do it if you're not going to get a result. So.
Okay, now you have, you work a lot with people who are signed, artists who are signed to major record labels.
We work with artists, we work with companies, events.
Okay, now getting back to the artists, they have the publicity and public relations department with a major label behind them. Why would they hire you? What are the advantages you have over in-house promotion, publicity?
Well, I think there are several advantages. An artist, especially an established artist or an artist who's reached a certain plateau in their career, usually a record is only a small part of his income pie. He'll have records, he'll have live concerts, he may have television, he may have movies, he may have publishing, several different things. A record label publicist is in effect a product publicist. Their responsibility is to sell records. They are not going to be interested in promoting a movie career, a television career, a publishing, or any of those things. Now, they may use those things as elements or as angles in stories they will pitch to magazines and television shows and so forth, but the focus won't be there for the whole career.
Okay, you give me the advantages of the independent firm, which is interested in the act as a whole, the whole act. What are the advantages that the in-house publicity person would have?
Well, the in-house publicity person, as a general rule, is going to be more familiar, will have a more intimate knowledge of the product, the service, whatever it is we're trying to sell. Another advantage of an independent firm, opposite that, is that a firm usually brings extra manpower, an agency brings in extra manpower, which is extra brain power, and a perspective, an objectivity that may not be there inside a company. And I think that's an advantage in many cases.
Who hires you?
Well, lots of people for lots of different reasons. We're hired sometimes directly by the artist. Sometimes we're hired and paid by managers. We're hired by record labels. It just depends.
Mm-hmm. Now, when an individual artist hires you, or a manager hires you, what's the first thing you do with that artist?
We try to review a marketing plan, try to review the artist's career. The things we look for in the marketing plan that are important to us are what are the good things? What are our opportunities? What's going on here? What are the bad things? What are our problems going to be? What are we going to be up against? What are the trends? What's the competition? We just try to establish a focus, a starting point, try to see where we are. It is also important for the new client to be able to relate to us what objectives are, what the goals are, short-term and long-range. Mm-hmm. We trying to sell X number of records? We trying to sell X number of concert tickets? Are we trying to win an award? Are we trying to get a gold record, a platinum record? Where are we going? Let's everybody work toward the same thing.
How do you get a marketing plan? What is that?
Well, a marketing plan, what's marketing? Mm-hmm. Marketing is knowing who your customers are and what they want. Once you know that, you design a product or a service that they're going to be willing to pay money for, right? What a marketing plan is what I've just outlined for you. It's where you sit down across a table with all the key people in your organization, all the principals, the people who will be involved, and you look at where you are, look at what your competition is, mm-hmm. again. What are the good points about the product? What are the good points about the service? What are the problems? How do you stack up against the competition? And it goes on, and establishing the goals, establishing the objectives.
Doesn't building an image come in there too? Or
yeah.
Creating an image?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
How do you go about creating an image?
Well, I think if you're talking specifically about an artist, a recording artist, an image, a successful image, is always based on real things, real qualities in a personality, real opinions, real things that people really do, the way they really are comfortable dressing.
So the image basically evolves as an extension of the person.
Mm-hmm. And I think this is particularly true for Nashville and for country music. Mm-hmm. It's more important than maybe in some other places.
Do you ever set about establishing an image that's totally new for an artist, or changing an artist's image, that the public perceives them a certain way? And
well, I'd recommend changing an artist's image if it was made up and it was false and it was not working, mm-hmm. and it probably wouldn't work.
Okay, now part of your job is getting these artists into the media. Mm-hmm. How do you get the media interested in an act that they want to cover them?
We have to communicate with them. The first thing that's required, I think, for a publicist is the ability to understand newspapers, television, magazines as a business with a bottom line. They're not public. They're not public servants. They're businesses, and their job is to make money. And so what you always have to think about when you're going to talk to an editor or a producer about a particular record or a particular act, you have to be able to look at what you've got, look at your marketing plan, look at your communications objective, and figure out what it is about your artist or about your record that is going to appeal to the audience, to that particular television show's audience, or that particular magazine's audience, or that particular newspaper's readership. You just have to find the things that make sense, that their readers are going to want to read about and that the editors will agree they're going to want to read about.
Okay, let me ask a nuts and bolts question.
Okay.
You've decided that this person would be good for the newspaper or for a certain magazine. What steps do you take to get them in there?
Well, I think a good, if you want to go through a step-by-step process, we ought to look at trying to do tour press. Tour press is an activity that takes place in support of an artist's concert tour in, say, anywhere from 50 to 100 markets over a period of months. And the objective, generally the objective for us, is both to sell tickets and to sell records. So we would generally begin that process with a call to the promoter. No publicist anywhere, unless she lives in the same town as the promoter, is going to understand a market as well as the guy who lives there and has promoted a show there every week for the last 15 years. So we always begin with that contact. The promoter is provided with literature, with a press kit, maybe with ad slicks. Depending on the client, we provide a number of different tools to the promoter. We have a discussion with him about what things are important to do, where he's buying advertising, and that sort of thing. We just kind of get a line on what's happening and get a feel for the city. And we'll follow that by, we'll use the promoter's advice, but we'll service the media in that city probably 5 weeks in advance. Ideally 5 weeks in front of the concert date.
When you say service, you mean sending them the press kit?
Send them in the mail, yeah.
And what's in the press kit?
Well, the press kit will include a biographical description of the artist and the record, more than likely. It might include editorial reprints of
stories
other newspaper stories or magazine articles that shed light on the artist. It might include a discography. It might include excerpts from other things.
Okay, and you send these to the newspapers?
To editors.
Editors?
To newspaper editors, radio stations that would be interested, to college press, to whatever's there. Whatever media is in that market that's going to be interested in this event will receive that information from us, along with all the local details about the ticket sales.
And they immediately say, I've got to do a story on this act.
No, they don't immediately say that. I'll tell you something about doing publicity. You cannot put things in the mail, send them to the post office, and expect things to happen. That is a waste of money. It is a waste of every 22 cents you put in the mail. Every kind of communication like that, I think, to be effective, needs to be followed up with a phone call, whether you're trying to set up an interview or not. At newspapers and magazines and in television, there's a lot of turnover and there's a lot of change. Your stuff might not be winding up on the right desk to begin with, especially if you're using a reference book to set up a mailing list. And if you're not in contact in that market often. Your stuff might be sitting somewhere and nobody's even opened it. So you always need to make a follow-up call, even if it's only just to establish that the right person has gotten the information. Generally doing tour press, especially in major markets, we want to set up an interview in advance. So we will give folks time to receive the stuff, call them on the phone, make sure they've gotten it, that it's gone to the right person, and then we'll talk with them about interviewing ex-artists over the phone. And we'll talk with them about the concert, we'll talk with them about maybe the kind of business they've done in that market before, maybe they've never played that market before. Bring them up to date on usually there are things new in a career that may not be included in a bio. So you bring the editor up to date on all those kinds of things, recent television appearances, upcoming television appearances.
So part of your job is selling. You're selling that act to convince the media they want to cover them.
What you're trying to do is convince an editor that his readership is going to be interested in knowing more about that artist.
How about TV? Do you cover TV with tour publicity?
Yes, we do. We have a tendency to put more emphasis on print media in doing tour press, simply because, although that's changing, now that more video is available on country artists, it's possible to do more kinds of things in advance. But generally, we put more emphasis on print. It's kind of hard to get television unless you can be there in person and that is usually not possible on a concert tour.
Would a big act do a press conference or something?
Yes, now that's a solution. Lots of times when there's big media demand for an artist, and he just doesn't have 30 minutes for everybody that wants to talk to him, a press conference will be set up on the day of the show, either in the afternoon or maybe after the show, so that everybody gets an opportunity to ask a few questions. And that's a real courtesy from the artist, I think, to the media.
Okay. Now, tour publicity, you're dealing with a lot of local markets. How about the national markets, the national magazines, the national TV shows? How do you pursue them? How do you get an act in Rolling Stone or on David Letterman?
Write letters, write letters, write letters, make phone calls, and make phone calls, and keep talking. It is sometimes very difficult to accomplish those kinds of things. I have worked on stories, ABC News Magazine 2020 things, other things that didn't come to fruition until a year later. Patience, persistence, knowing who you're talking to, and keeping after it.
How do you keep track of what you do? How do you know that you're getting anything done, you're accomplishing anything?
Or how do we measure results?
Yeah.
Well, sales. Back again to the marketing plan. What were we trying to do? Sell records, sell concert tickets, and you go back and you look. Did we sell out? Did we make money? Do we have a gold record? Is it getting airplay?
So you're just not measuring on how many clips you got?
No.
How many clippings from?
No. How many clippings you get doesn't matter. The clipping is not the objective.
Okay.
It's the result.
Impossible question, but what's the most important media you feel in establishing an act from the independent publicity person?
Well, there's a couple of different ways to look at that, and I think if you're talking about a brand new baby act, the most important thing in the beginning is the trade press, because generally you can't break a record without radio airplay. You can't break a record without your label support. You can't break a record without industry support. So you start, it's like throwing a pebble in a pond. You start small with the trade magazines, with the industry newsletters, and that sort of thing. And then you move out from there to the fan magazines, to local television shows, concert press, tour press, and it builds from there. It's really a stepping stone kind of thing. I think television exposure is real key in developing a new act. But what we need to remember is that an artist's ability to command TV is lots of times based on what is happening for him in the print media. I think I read some interesting statistics not too long ago about the number of amount of television news coverage that is generated by wire stories. I think it's 76%.
Goodness. So the big advantage over print is that it excites all of the other media.
Yes.
And the big advantage over television.
And the print is something you can use. It's not just your opinion. You have, if you're lucky, an agreement, support. You've got something you can say what you think, and then this is what 9 other people think as well. And many print journalists are very influential. Their opinion matters to people. And so you go after those key people.
And the big advantage over television is that you reach so many people.
Absolutely.
Are there disadvantages to television? Are there acts you don't want on television?
Yes, there are. I mean, if an artist is not comfortable with cameras, it may backfire. It really does depend on the artist. And then there's different kinds of TV. You know, there are different kinds of television shows, different kinds of hosts, and a lot of it has to do with the possible chemistry between an interviewer and the interviewee. So
a disadvantage of TV might be really a weakness of the artist, or where an artist isn't particularly strong on TV.
Or weakness of the interviewer as well. I mean, if I felt like a talk show host wasn't going to understand an artist and might get up there and try to make a fool out of him, and that the artist wouldn't be able to handle that in a entertaining way, then I wouldn't recommend it.
How about print? Are there any disadvantages to print coverage?
Well, there are. There are advantages and disadvantages to everything, and there are disadvantages to print as well. I find that generally, after an artist has been doing interviews for a little while, they get comfortable, and they sort of know what to expect. They know, they have a general idea of what kinds of questions they're going to be asked, and they get a better feeling for the answers. Now, this is when they're doing interviews with people who do celebrity interviews on a regular basis. It's not very much of a problem. Everybody knows what to expect, and you know, it's just a matter of doing it well. On the other hand, I think it can be perilous for an artist to be interviewed by someone from outside, maybe the entertainment section of the newspaper.
Could be a disastrous
different kinds
interview.
of questions, and those things come up sometimes when there are hard news events affecting an artist. If there is an accident or a death in the family, or their father gets elected president, or you know, when there are controversial issues and that sort of thing, then artists who are used to doing celebrity interviews then get in with having to answer questions from a reporter who's after hard news. It's a different story.
Do you rehearse your acts with the media?
We have occasionally sent folks to media school, where we'll have a professional interviewer, both for print and for TV, conduct an interview and then analyze it, break it down, show our client how it can be done better, and what was good and strong about it. I usually, however, all of the staff people at Network, we sit in on a lot of interviews. A lot of journalists object to public relations people sitting in on interviews. I think most of the time they feel like we're trying to control what's happening, or have some influence on the way things are going. In our case, while we may be there to answer a question that our client can't answer, or to say, we don't know the answer to that question right now, but we'll find out for you and we'll have the answer in an hour. Also, part of the reason why we're there is to be in a position to help our client do a better job the next time, maybe, or even to help the person who's doing the interview get some insight into an answer that was given.
Are there examples that you have had of somebody just getting everything wrong, publishing a disastrous story, getting all the facts backwards, or maybe just giving a slant that's just really against an artist?
Well, one recent example comes to mind. David Allen Coe, one of our clients, was doing a concert somewhere recently, and there was a report in the newspaper about how he didn't allow any of the members of his band or his road crew to drink. And the reporter also claimed that, however, David was back in his dressing room and he and his father were drinking. They were drinking from a bottle of something. And it was patently untrue. It was not true. And we called and asked for a correction and explained, not true. And they did run a retraction. I'm not sure what the exact story was there, but
you know,
and that's another thing that publicists need to remember to do. When information appears that is wrong, the thing to do is correct it. The editor wants to know if it was wrong because he doesn't want to say it again. You also don't want, you know, news picks up from news. TV is going to pick up from newspapers. Magazines are going to pick up from newspapers. It's in there wrong once, it's liable to be wrong
a number of times.
25 more times. So the thing to do is to get it corrected as quickly as possible.
Well, that was going to be a follow-up question. Is that what do you do with disastrous news? I suppose if you have somebody that gets busted for drugs or does something horrible or shoots their mother, how do you handle that?
Tell the truth.
Always tell the truth. Tell me the difference between publicity and public relations.
Well, publicity is one function, one tool of public relations. public relations can involve advertising, direct mail, planning newsmaking events, brochures, logo design, publicity, on and on and on and on. It's one tool.
And public relations involves everything in building an artist.
With an objective, public relations.
Is this a very lucrative field? How much do independent publicity people make?
Independent publicity people do not make a lot of money. No one does this to make money. I think that for the most part, the people who are professional public relations counselors love what they're doing and couldn't stand to do anything else. It's certainly not an extremely lucrative profession. However, there is money to be made within public relations, not necessarily in the music industry. Public relations practitioners at big agencies, I think, can command salaries ranging from starting salaries, you know, $25,000 and up. A good salary in public relations would top out around 60, I think, these days. Record label publicists have salaries that are comparable to those figures. Independent publicists, however, for the most part, don't.
In other words,
starting salary at our agency would be in the $12,000 range. Working at an agency for a newcomer, for someone just out of school and just starting out, is there are other advantages. You get to meet an awful lot of people, make an awful lot of contacts, and learn a whole lot. It is also a broader perspective within the profession than you're liable to get in the context of a record label. So I think it makes sense for people who are interested in working for record labels within publicity departments to work at an agency and work into a label, get an overview, and then have a specialty.
So how would you advise someone to get involved in public relations and publicity? What are you looking for in people, and how should they get started?
What I look for in a new account executive is wide-ranging interests, well-read. I prefer a background in journalism. I need writing skills, social skills, common sense, a real eye for detail, and person needs to have a real ability to organize, to stay on top of things, and to be a self-starter, self-motivated.
How would someone get a start in publicity?
Well, I think one of the best places to start would be in a nightclub. Anybody that wants to do entertainment publicity, that's real good experience. There are only, however, X number of nightclubs, and most of them can't afford to have a publicist on staff. For a student interested, however, in pursuing a career, I think if the time is available, that volunteer work is a real good thing to do within the music industry. The music industry has all kinds of trade and professional organizations that need all the help they can get. And they use volunteers on a regular basis. So I think becoming involved with the Nashville Music Association, with the Country Music Association, with NARAS, with the Gospel Music Association, with songwriters, all of these folks, they can all use help, and it's a very good experience. And you also get to meet a lot of people and have others be aware of your abilities, decision makers aware.
Okay. Liz, thank you for
You're most welcome.
being with us. That was Liz Thiels, co-founder and president of Network Inc.